The Colts have a big one this Sunday on the road in Tennessee as they look to sweep the Titans for the first time since Andrew Luck was catching all of our hearts. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's up, everyone? Thanks for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. What's up, everybody? This is Jake Arthur. You know me from horseshoehuddle.com. And today it's our final preview of Colts and Titans. It's a late season matchup. The Colts are still battling for their playoff lives. They need this division matchup pretty badly. The Titans really faltering, not exactly in the mix, as you would say. But now we know the final injury report out. So we'll go over that, what to expect there, some keys to the game, and then I'll play you a chat I had with Titans coach Tom Manning this week, as well as tight end Drew Ogletree, who's been kind of an exciting young second-year player as well. But let's go ahead and start it off with injuries. Least surprising of the bunch, of course, is Jonathan Taylor and his thumb injury. While he's not going to go on IR, he is, it's mandatory that we, notify you that he is not going to be playing on Sunday, obviously. Had surgery on that thumb, so he's expected to be out at least a couple weeks. I believe 2 to 3 was the initial timeline given by owner Jim Irsay. So obviously in his absence, Zack Moss is going to get the start with Trey Sermon serving as the backup. So Moss, obviously, he has been playing at a starter level already. So while you hate to lose a player like Jonathan Taylor, the Colts are losing their starter and just replacing him with another starting level player. Once Jonathan Taylor got back and took over the main roles, Zack Moss was still a top 5 leading rusher in the NFL for a few weeks. In fact, Moss was still number 5 or 6 in the NFL at a point where he didn't even have a 10-touch game for like 3 weeks. So that's how far of a pace he set ahead by the time that Taylor actually got in and started getting work. And so, don't be surprised if over these next few weeks, Moss starts racking it up again and climbs back up into that top 5, 6, 7 rushing. He's still right there around the top dozen. So Moss has been a really productive player for the Colts this year. It's not a huge deal that they're losing Jonathan Taylor. He is a home run hitter. He's an outstanding player, and he's starting to look like Jonathan Taylor again. But Zack Moss is just fine. I'm interested to see a little bit more of Trey Sermon. We talked to him this week as well. That's on our YouTube. I do want to see a little bit more of him. Obviously, you're going to see him almost not at all when it's Moss and Taylor out there. But you give him maybe 5, 6 touches or so. Let's just see how it goes. He's capable of catching the ball. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he can do a little something in pass protection as well. They wouldn't entrust him to be out there if he couldn't. So we'll see how that goes. Now, with that said, Moss and Sermon are the only 2 healthy running backs on the roster right now. You have Tyler Goodson and Xavier Scott on the practice squad, so expect to see one of those guys elevated on Saturday for the game. Whoever holds more special teams value is likely going to get the nod there. JuJu Brents, the cornerback, he has also been ruled out. Now, he's been out for like 5 weeks now, 5 games since the Cleveland game. It's his quad. Now, the Shane Steichen has been asked, why didn't you guys put him on IR? Was there consideration to put him on IR? And I just don't think they anticipated it going this long, or they just couldn't know that this would be the timeline at the time of his injury. Quads are kind of a tough one. You kind of have to wait and see just how it heals. Some guys obviously quicker than others. Steichen did say that he's getting closer, but in Steichen speak, that's still not much of a timetable. That could be 1 week, 2 weeks, 3. We don't know. But in Brent's absence, Darrell Baker Jr. has rebounded to start playing some pretty good football. Obviously got off to a rough start in that Cleveland game with the 2 key penalties. But just looking, in the last 3 games out there for him, he is allowing just an 84.7 passer rating when targeted, has not given up any touchdowns, doesn't have any penalties to his name either ever since that Cleveland game. So Baker's been doing pretty well in his absence. The first big test was obviously last week with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Had a steady game, didn't get torched really. Mike Evans obviously had a pretty decent performance, but that wasn't necessarily all. Darrell Baker Jr., I think the brunt of that was Jalen Jones, but those 2 young guys have been doing a really good job. If you look over at horseshoehuddle.com, Jones is actually on a historic pace in terms of what he's allowing in coverage over, I think it might be ESPN, but whatever era they've been covering. But Jones is far and ahead in comparison to a bunch of other rookie cornerbacks, not just from this year, but for the last several years. So Jalen Jones, Darrell Baker doing well. You want to see JuJu Brents back in there as soon as possible, but they're in decent hands until Brents gets back. Ryan Kelly, he has been removed from the injury report. He had his concussion. He was a full participant in practice last week on Thursday, and then on Friday didn't practice. It's kind of the same story he had early in the year. He had a concussion earlier in the season, progressed through the practice report, but by the time Friday got there, he was absent, didn't play until the next week. So it looks like that's happening again. Wesley French, who had been filling in, I think he's got 6 games worth of action this year. He's filled in for Ryan Kelly and has done a really nice job. I don't really have any gripes about their performance from French, but Kelly is having a really, really good year. Pro Football Focus has him with an 81.2 grade on the season, which is so far the best of his entire career. Has had a strong performance both as a run and pass blocker. He's well above average in grades at both of those. So really big season from Ryan Kelly. You want to see your team at full strength when you're going against Jeffrey Simmons and T.R. Tart and those guys, because Tennessee is not doing well right now, really offensively or defensively in the grand scheme of things. But they do have some guys up front, obviously, that can wreak havoc. And if the Colts want to run the ball successfully, which T.R. Tart was not in the game last time when they did, then Ryan Kelly is going to have to be on his game now. So otherwise, Drew Ogletree was also removed from the injury report. He is back. He had a foot injury, missed a couple weeks there. He is, and again, I'm going to play for you my conversation I had with him earlier this week. So he has had a nice little season, only 9 receptions, but he's got 147 yards on those and 2 touchdowns. Of those 9 receptions, he's got 8 first downs and 2 touchdowns. Again, his average depth of target this season is 13.6. So they've been looking for him downfield, and he's been converting. He's been a big play threat for them. Also, no drops. So Ogletree being back is good. That probably means Will Mallory will probably go back to the inactive list because now with all your tight ends healthy again, with the exception of Jelani Woods, Will Mallory has been kind of that next guy up, but first man out when the injured tight ends come back. So coming up next, we're going to look at some of the keys to this game because, again, the Colts should definitely be favored on paper, but there are some areas where they could struggle as if with any opponent. And plus, with the AFC, you never know. Any team could beat any team any week. But, yeah. As the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel, everybody. Right now, new customers, you guys get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there is no better time to get in on the action than right now. The app is super easy to use. If you've used it before, you know exactly what I mean. If you haven't, it's not scary. You can get to anything you want to see. They got a bunch of different kind of bets, props, spreads, over-unders, all that stuff. Whatever you want, they've got something for everybody. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. And Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Very exciting things. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every league. So go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Okie doke, folks. So looking at this game, I do kind of compare it to the Patriots and Panthers games. When you look at it, and the Buccaneers game was at the end of that stretch. This one falls right in line with those. A lot of those teams are just kind of comparable. The Titans don't rank exceptionally well in anything offensively. Even running the ball with Derrick Henry, they're below average in everything. Scoring, total offense, rushing offense, passing offense, all of it. To their credit, they're not turning the ball over a lot. They're near the top of the league in that, only 12 turnovers so far. But you got a rookie quarterback there in Will Levis, who the Titans fan base is kind of trying to paint this as a revenge game of sorts for Will Levis, because he thought there was a pretty good chance he could be here with the Colts rather than they obviously took Anthony Richardson. Richardson was the plan for a while leading into this one, and Levis was probably the fallback plan. So there really doesn't need to be any extra juice to this. It's kind of being built up that way, but whatever. So he may have a little extra motivation coming into this one. He's had a fine rookie season so far. I mean, he popped off red hot in that first game, I think, with like 4 touchdowns. But he's got a decent touchdown to turnover ratio this year, completing 60% of his passes. But the Titans offense in general is just not great. Main thing I worry about really is the Colts defense has allowed everybody to run on them, whether they're good at running the ball or not. And now they have Derrick Henry that they're facing, with Grover Stewart being out finally for the final week. He'll be back against Cincinnati. This is one where it's going to take all hands on deck. Like, the defensive backs have to be ready. Julian Blackmon, Ronnie Thomas got to be ready. The cornerbacks got to be ready to tackle. So this is going to be a big one. If they don't want Henry to totally kill them up the middle, that's to me, that's the recipe. If Tennessee wins this one, is it would have to be just through Derrick Henry getting 150, 170 yards. You know what I mean? And that seems unlikely, but considering it's Derrick Henry and he's done that throughout his career, and he's going against a pretty vulnerable run defense the Buccaneers can't run the ball. They were dead last in the league, and they still put up like 50 more yards than their average. The Colts have given up well over 100 yards per game, since Grover's been out. They were giving up like 154 yards per game going into last week against the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers still had over 120, which was uncharacteristically good for them. So I don't feel great about that. But just the Colts offense, I think, I don't want to say gets a break, because I'm always going to be a little wary of Tennessee's defense. Like, they've got Mike Vrabel, and they've just still got some really nice players there. This is the first time they're not facing Kevin Byard in forever, it seems like, and Byard is always a thorn in the Colts side. But Tennessee defensively, they're almost last in takeaways. Only 8 takeaways this year. They rank 31st there. Only 3 picks. So that was with Kevin Byard for a good chunk of this, and now they don't have Kevin Byard. So for a Colts offense with a quarterback that can be turnover prone in Gardner Minshew, he is facing a defense that does not take the ball away. So that's kind of a relief. Still no reason to not be on your P's and Q's and take care of it. But it's just not a defense that takes the ball away. Tennessee's defense is 4th in red zone scoring. The Colts have been pretty good there. I mean, having Jonathan Taylor helps, having Zach Moss helps. And then Minshew has been pretty decent in the red zone, and he's able to kind of scramble around and get himself in there as well. He's got 3 rushing touchdowns. Tennessee's defense only allowing 39.5% touchdowns in the red zone. So, of course, that's kind of tough. But in general, they rank middle of the pack against. Actually, they're not very high up at all against the pass. Run defense, overall, they rank near the middle, but they are pretty high up still in yards per carry. Now, That was the case when they faced each other back earlier in the year, but the Colts absolutely smashed them in the mouth with that one. Jonathan Taylor was recently back in that game, and I believe him and Zach Moss combined for like 170 yards. It was a huge game. It was when Zach Moss had like that 56-yard touchdown. The Colts obviously don't have Taylor in this one, but they do have Moss. They've got a decently healthy offensive line. So while I don't think they're going to have that gaudy performance again, I do imagine the Colts' offensive approach is going to be through Zach Moss. And then for Gardner or Minshew to just kind of take what the defense gives them from there. Get the short stuff, lots of Josh Downs. I think probably another heavy dose of Michael Pittman Jr. You might see it being similar to what we saw last week. Now, Pittman had 10 catches, over 100 yards. So it's hard to forecast someone duplicating that because it's pretty high numbers. But that's probably what I would do, honestly. Like, Tennessee is vulnerable through the air. I think I would get the tight ends a little more involved. Get Drew Ogletree, Kylan Granson going over the middle, up the seam. I think that'd be pretty dangerous for the Colts to be able to do against Tennessee. But we'll see. I mean, I doubt what worked last time is going to work this time. It seems too easy to say that's how it's going to go. Again, Tennessee is going to have T.R. Tart this time around. They're generally pretty healthy. The only person on their injury report that's in question is Treylon Burks, the receiver. He's not a game breaker by any means. He's been fine, but he's also banged up quite a bit. So we'll see. Coming up next, I'm going to play for you guys a conversation I had with tight ends coach Tom Manning, as well as tight end Drew Ogletree. Buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun that you're actually going to have. I personally love Gametime because if I feel like being spontaneous, doing something on a whim, it doesn't take weeks of preparation. You can go to a show or something and just go right to Gametime, not have to browse through a bunch of different places because they're going to give you the best price guarantee. Plus, with their flash deals, images of seat views, and again, that guarantee, Gametime is an easy choice. It's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. Get images of your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds. 2 taps, all set. Tickets are sent directly to your phone as well, so you don't have to dig through your email. That can always be nerve-wracking when you're still trying to look through your tickets that you purchased weeks or months ago and you got a line behind you. So snag the tickets without the stress with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. You've kind of dealt with an ever-changing group this year, lots of injuries, things like that. But when you really look at it through, 13 weeks so far, how has your tight end group that's a pretty young core, how have they developed from the start to now?
Yeah, I think overall they've done a really good job. You kind of alluded to, there's been a lot of guys that have, just with some injuries and different things, there's been a lot of guys that kind of have had to carry a lot of roles. We've been very impressed with their professionalism and their ability to go in there with whatever we've asked them to do in terms of offensive scheme. They've done a very good job. I think Mo's done a great job of leading. We do have a lot of younger guys in that room, and he's done a really good job of just kind of embracing those guys and helping them from a week-to-week basis in terms of their preparation. So it's a really good room of guys. I think the guys that take it very seriously and guys that prepare the right way, and they've done a good job overall.
Guys like Kylan and Drew have really grown as blockers as well this year. It wasn't really their niche coming into the year, I guess you could say. What have you noticed specifically with those two and how they've grown as blockers?
Yeah, I think, obviously at the tight end position, you typically are at a disadvantage in terms of the matchup in terms of blocking. So I think before anything, it comes down to their want to. If you can find a guy that is willing, that's one thing. To be able is another thing. Mm-hmm. And I think both of those guys have great ability, and they certainly have a willingness to. So really the credit goes to them in terms of their development as blockers. I think they've embraced some of the roles that they've been asked to take on, and they've done a great job.
I gotta ask about the play. So I guess we went into the decision to utilize Zaire and kind of the Mo Alley Cox player. I guess Shane said it was your idea to kind of go with it. What gave you the idea to roll with it?
Yeah, I don't know if I can take all credit for it. As we're planning for short yardage things, you kind of scour the videotape and find the best things and the best situations, and really I think kind of saw a look and really workshopped it with Tony. Hey, what are the problems if we did this? And I think his help just in terms of the protection. We tried to find the best way to do it, and really to me I think the process that we have on offense, it's really a credit to Shane and Jim Bob, where hey, you can bring an idea in and they'll kind of help tweak it and find the best way possible. I take no credit for putting Zaire in. I think that was really Shane kind of said, hey, I think this is probably the right fit, and really in all honesty, I mean, your game plan plays every week. You always try to put your guys in position, but I think to call it in the situation when you call it, I think it really credit goes to Shane and having enough confidence, and Jim Bob as well, just to make that call when they did. That was a great job.
What have you seen out of Will Mallory? He's kind of got to make his impact in little fits and spurts, but he's done a good job. Yeah,
Will. When Will came in, he was injured and he got dinged up in, I think, rookie minicamp, and really didn't get a ton of the spring stuff, and then got a little tweaked up again in fall camp. I've been really pleased with Will's continued growth throughout. I think sometimes as a young player, you come in at tight end, it's a different. You're asked to do different things. It's a different game from what you probably have done in college. So there's a lot of learning involved. And then two, the physical aspect's very different. And then the length of schedule is different. And I think a lot of times as young players to continually grow in development throughout a year, I don't think you see it all the time. And I think I've been really pleased and excited about. Will has the attitude of every day he's going to get a little bit better, and he has just continued to improve and grow. So we've been real happy with Will. He's a phenomenal guy, takes it real serious. His approach and process is phenomenal, and he's continuing to get better.
How hard has this season been on Jelani?
Man, it's hard. You feel for him, I think it's been anytime you miss an extended period of time and you get injured, it's hard. But I think he thought he was close, and I think that's a tough deal, and certainly Jelani's is a really good football player and a great young man, and it's been tough for him.
What's been his engagement level behind the scenes? Because obviously he can't play, he can't be out there, but I assume he's still around and mixing up with you.
Well, I think the thing about Jelani is one, he's a great human being. He's got a great spirit about himself. He's a great teammate, and that's a really close knit room, which I think has been helpful to us, and just in terms of you kind of asked earlier about if had a lot of guys have to play and those kind of things. I think he's a big part of that, just the tightness of that group. I think a lot of those things come into the character of the people in the room, and Jelani's a big part of it.
Obviously, last year you had to sit on the sidelines, kind of soak everything in. You've been able to play in spurts this year, injuries, what have you. But how do you evaluate yourself from making your debut really at the beginning to now, 13 weeks in? How do you feel about your growth?
I feel good. My growth as a player and also as a teammate, and just myself as a person. I feel like getting into the groove of things definitely helped me out, and now I feel like I'm rolling. I can think fast, I can move fast, I can play faster.
And you and Kylan, you guys were more known as like pass catchers, big play guys coming into the year, but you've both really proven your chops as blockers. How much emphasis have you put on that? And Coach Manning, I was just talking to him, he said, he commends you guys because you have to want to do it and be able to do it. So what's your approach to blocking?
Yeah, no, blocking is really just willingness to block. Mm-hmm. And then you can worry about the footsteps and the hand placement after that, but you just got to want to block it first. But I kind of try to big emphasis this summer in my training with my run blocking and pass blocking, just because I want to be that complete tight end at the end of the day. I want to be up there with George Kittle and all those guys, so I definitely want to work on that.
Nice. And last year, obviously, I'm sure that was quite frustrating, but now you've been able to play. What are you most proud of from yourself for this season?
Not quitting. You know, there's a lot of tough times, a lot of dark times last season, and even just this season. Just always believing in myself, and I got to say thank you to my support staff and my teammates for that one. So always keeping my head up high and staying positive.
And the foot's in the right direction. You're getting closer. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Cool. All right. All right. Thanks to Coach Manning and Drew again for their time this week. We'll be keeping an eye on those guys throughout the season. If you guys don't already, follow at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, and at Zack Hicks2 on Twitter. Also, be sure to subscribe on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts. We would also love your guys' ratings and reviews as well. I saw our stuff on Spotify wrap for our podcast personally. Very, very thankful for you guys. Very happy with how things look with that. So let's keep it up in this next calendar year as well. And with that, we will see you guys after this game.